All right, guys, we're going to talk about fraud in the days of the internet. So if any of you are over probably 35, 40 years old, you might remember when you would go to a restaurant or even a convenience store in a small town, not so much because there's not too many scumbags. But used to be like you pay with a credit card at the restaurant, they're like, we need to see your ID. You go to the gas station to buy anything, we need to see your ID because they want to make sure you're not using somebody else's card. Now, does anybody remember that? Comment if you remember those days. And I'm leading up to something here, and here's where I'm going with this. So the way our billing system works, it lets us know, it identifies transactions. So when somebody goes on and buys a brick or prop cash or whatever they're buying, it will identify if there's characteristics of that order that may be fraudulent. Not a for sure, but maybe. Here's an example of where it wasn't. I have a client who's very wealthy. He has plenty of money. He just didn't have cash on him in the moment. So he says, do you mind if I use my card to pay for this very expensive job you're making? This not at all. Your card, I take your card all day long, no problem. So it went through, no problem. And I went and looked at the transaction later and it said that he was a medium fraud risk. And I'm like, I wonder what that could be. Now, that card, it turns out, is billed to an address in Beverly Hills. He's picking up in Las Vegas. So it seemed unusual, so our software deemed it potentially fraudulent. Obviously that wasn't the case. He didn't do a chargeback. He's a good dude. He's honest. He would never do something like that because he's not a scumbag. So we get lots of people that their transactions come in and say it's a medium or high fraud risk. Well, I got to look at that and say, well, do I want to scoop up all this prop cash, or do I want to spend weeks making this gorgeous brick and send it to this guy or girl on the chance that they might be using a stolen credit card, they might be using their grandma's neighbor's card that she left at the restaurant and they picked it up and charged on it. She hasn't seen the bill yet, so she doesn't know it's fraud yet. So that's a risk every business owner takes, especially when doing business online. So what we do to mitigate some of that risk is when it comes in as a medium or high fraud risk, we will contact the client by telephone, email, text message, whatever. We get a hold of them and we say, look, it came back as possible fraud. We need to see the card you used, cover up the first numbers. We don't need to see those, just those last four numbers and your ID to make sure you are who is supposedly made this order. Now, the people that come back immediately and say stuff like, oh man, you sound like you're scamming me. Nobody asks for ID for an online transaction. I do. How come? This is a good chance you're trying to jack me. I've had people order $5,000, $10,000 of this stuff, call me up and say, man, this is great. 2 days later, charge back. Then they don't take my calls. Now I'm out 10 grand. That ain't cool. So let me know what you guys think in the comments about our procedure for verifying people's identity. And by the way, every person that refused to send their information that we sent it anyways, every one of them is charged back or came back as fraud or something like that. So there's a lot of scumbags out there. So if you run an online business, let me know how you handle this kind of stuff. Thank you. See ya.